Good morning, everybody. Earlier in the week, I received a text from a friend of mine who was in the chaplaincy program at Upaya with me, and we used to meet regularly, but we haven't checked in with each other in about 9 months or so. And so he just sent me a text checking in with me, wondering how I was doing, and so I responded back and shared what was going on. And then I asked him how things were going for him and for his family, his wife and grandchild. And his quick response back to me was that his wife had recently been diagnosed with cancer and were waiting for a second biopsy to know just how to go forward. So our texts went back and forth for a while, and I ended my part of the conversation by saying that I would dedicate the merit of my practice to his wife and to him and to the rest of his family. And he's a practicing Buddhist, so I'm pretty sure he knew what I meant. And they've stayed, obviously, in my mind and my heart this whole time since we connected earlier. And at one point I thought, he knows I'm dedicating the merit of my practice to them, and I'm assuming he understands me. But there was just this thought in my head of, okay, when I say that, and it does feel wholehearted, when I say that though, what am I actually meaning to say? What is the actual sentiment and or thought that I'm giving away to someone who I think would benefit from the merit of my own practice? And then, in this kind of wonderful moment of synchronicity, I was at home and I walked past my bookshelf, and on my bookshelf is this fairly new, I think it came out in, I don't know, maybe fall or early, after the first of the year, but there's a deck of a box set of meditations that Roshi Joan Halifax from Upaya has put together, and you can see that there's a beautiful enso that she drew here on the front. And she calls this a contemplative card deck with 55 meditations to cultivate a courageous heart. So I brought it back with me, and I sat down on my couch and I opened it up, and I took out the deck, and I had decided on that particular day, which is something I've done before, decided on that particular day to just randomly choose a card and maybe work with it for the day, or maybe even for the week, or maybe even for the month, I don't know. So I just kind of let my fingers wander around in this deck that I had spread out, and I pulled out a card. And on the front of the card that I pulled out is a black enso. It's got it following us around, isn't it? Because not all cards have black ensos. And it has the title Space in big letters, which is one of 5 different, there's space and air and fire, so on and so forth. And then below that, coming home to wisdom. And I just thought, well, how appropriate is this? We've been talking about the enso, and much of our discussions about the ox-herding pictures were about coming home. Just coming home to our wisdom, coming home to who we've always been. So that's the front of the card that you see. And then I turn it over, and on the flip side, as is true for all the cards, there's a title, and then there is a guided meditation from Roshi that you can work with. So on the flip side, the card reads, dedicating the merit. So, yeah, so the universe, it's right there. And then there's Roshi's guided meditation after that, and something else that I am going to read to you fully a little bit later in my talk. But I remember so clearly the first time I heard about the idea of merit as it related to Buddhism specifically, and I was specifically in Theravadan Buddhism, and it was when I was spending a lot of time in Thailand, and I was learning about Theravadan Buddhism and studying and practicing it as much as I could. And it's a regular practice there. If any of you have ever been in any Buddhist country for that matter, it's a regular practice to make offerings to temples, right? And it can be food, cooked or uncooked, bags of rice, things like that. It can be toiletries for the monks, cleaning supplies for the temple. In fact, you know, there are roadside shops that sell these goods already placed in a yellow plastic bucket, and it's filled with stuff, and they wrap it up in cellophane, and you can just stop in there and buy one and take it to the temple and offer it to the monk who happens to be there. At one time I'd been teaching in northern Thailand, and I was asked to take, a friend of mine called and said, you need to take several 50-pound bags of rice to this specific temple that was out in the countryside. And she kind of explained that it was an important moment, and that I needed to do this. And there was a revered elder monk there. So I, you know, there were the other Thai teachers, I mentioned this to them, and they said, oh yes, we know who you're talking about, let's all go out there and, you know, we'll sit with the monk for a while and so forth. So that's what we did, and it was really a wonderful time, moment to be with this particular monk. Even though he didn't speak English, he was special. So I got back to Bangkok some weeks later, and my friend mentioned, this group of people I was with, my friend mentioned that I had taken these big bags of rice to the temple there. And one of the older women sitting at the table said, oh, you want to get merit for a better life, good for you. And I just looked at her like, no, no. I mean, in my mind, I'm going, no, I didn't say no. But I thought, oh, that feels, you know, that's greedy. I didn't have that kind of thing in mind that I needed something in return. But to be sure, I was not understanding the full significance, really, of what my action was. And it was considered a very generous thing to do, of course. But I did, in this culture, I did gain something very important from it. I gained merit by doing an act of goodness. And by getting this merit, it helps determine the quality of my life and my next life, provided I have a next life. And in other words, that I have not reached nirvana and do not have to continue the cycle of life and death here. But this one example, you know, there are many cultures and religious traditions that offer or gain merit, you know, in numerous ways that help you personally, and not just the temple or the people you're giving to. And you know, another way of gaining merit across Southeast Asia and South Asia too is you can save animals. So that might look like saving a steer from slaughter, and it then gets to go out to pasture. So you pay money to do that. You can go to a market and save fish or birds, and then they are then released back into the wild. And it brings money, right, for the one paying to release them. It brings merit to the one paying to release them. And these are, you know, they're considered acts of generosity. But also, they can be a bit controversial. In the case of the animals, they are, you know, sometimes released into environments that are not suited to them, or habitats that cannot support them, for instance. And sometimes this is how people in a very poor country live, is by selling this merit, taking the fish out, putting them in the water, and then as soon as everybody turns around, gathering them all back up, putting them back in the bucket, and then selling them again. So there's a downside to this. But this was when I first, I understood how important merit can be in certain cultures and religious environments. In Mahayana Buddhism, however, there's a definite shift away from receiving anything. In fact, our emphasis is on offering. As examples, here together every Sunday, after we chant the Heart Sutra, we hear the Kokyo recite the echo. Thus, as we respectfully chant the Great Wisdom Beyond Wisdom Heart Sutra, the merit collected thereby we offer too. So just by reciting the Heart Sutra, we are receiving merit. And we're able to offer that merit. And in this case, we're offering it to Shakyamuni Buddha, Manjushri, our female ancestors, and so on. Additionally, in our morning, we offer, after the Metta Sutta, the Kokyo recites, we offer the benefit of our meditation and service for the well-being of, and the Sangha has an opportunity to offer names of those to whom they want to dedicate the merit of practice. So we're familiar with this. We do this. We also may end our program on Sundays chanting the refuges, Buddha Dharma Sangha, or the Bodhisattva vows, both which emphasize that we're undertaking the practice not just for ourselves, but for others, the entire world, the entire universe. And this is enlightenment and awakening for the sake of all, we can say. Our practice has a meaning, obviously, beyond benefiting just ourselves, although it does that too. And what does it mean to us individually and as a Sangha? What exactly are we offering? And before I go on, does anybody want to, have you thought about this? Does anybody have a thought on what it is exactly you're offering? No pressure.
Blessings, love, support,
Yeah.
compassion.
Yes. And we understand Zazen, thank you, Chris. Zazen, just sitting. You know, this Zen contemplative practice of ours trains and expands not only our minds, of course, but also our hearts. Importantly, our hearts. And the practice shines a very bright light on the importance of the simple intention of trying. Trying, just sitting down. Align with whatever our highest intentions are. Maybe it's do no harm, do good, whatever it happens to be for you. Even one moment builds on itself and cultivates this goodness. In fact, we can say that this practice of ours is synonymous with goodness. It's an act of radical generosity, really. And it has the potential for this boundless rippling effect. Think of the metta practices. I think Linda talked about those one time. I might be wrong about that, but we've talked about them a number of times here in Zendo, in which we meditate first on the well-being of ourselves, and then our close friends, and then our acquaintances, and then our enemies, and so on and so forth, until we end up with these concentric circles out into the universe and beyond. And we can try to remember that actually we're not practicing for all sentient beings, but rather we are practicing with all sentient beings as sentient beings. We are practicing with all sentient beings, ourselves as sentient beings. And this simple goodness, this generosity, our intentions have value beyond what we might see or understand, actually. And we can offer this even if, in fact, our rational minds don't see or understand the mechanics of it. Even if our rational minds can't articulate what's happening exactly. How is it we offer goodness through a sentence? There's a really good example of this that I had read some time ago in Lion's Roar. And this writer was using, Yokohama, was using an example of about throwing trash out of a car window and out onto the sidewalk or out onto the lawn. And I think we can all agree that when we see something like that, when we see it happen, the effect of those actions are immediately visible. It's right in front of us. But it's also true that the effect of not throwing trash onto the streets, not littering, even if we don't consciously notice it in the same way, is visible as well. So beyond the visible, beyond what we see on the streets, are the effects on people's minds. How litter or its absence changes the atmosphere, which in turn changes us. And beyond that, in the realm of intention, are effects that we will never know through our senses or our consciousness. We never know what the effects are of us offering the benefit of our meditation to others. So what was I offering to my friend and his wife, who has been recently diagnosed with cancer? Oh, maybe in my mind I don't really know how this works. But I know intimately the trust I have in our practice, its roots in compassion, its ability to change the way that I think and act and feel, all for the better good. And surely we know the power of that and how unlimited it seems to be. So I want to return to Roshi's new collection of meditation cards. And actually the box set is called In a Moment, in a Breath. And again, this card I randomly selected earlier this week as the Black Enso and space and coming home to wisdom. And then on the flip side, dedicating the merit. So to finish up today, I'd just like to share the meditation she includes. It's very short. And this is how you would work with the card. You would read through this, and then you could do what she says, or you could just read through it a couple of times, or just contemplate the title. There are many ways you can work with these cards. But I'll read it slowly, and then we'll just think for a minute on it, or feel what we're feeling, and then I'll come back and finish the talk. So, dedicating the merit. Gently rest your attention on your breath. Gather in your heart any value you may have realized while practicing today. Sense in your body and heart the meaning of the following words. May this practice nourish each thing in all realms and truly benefit all beings. May this practice nourish each thing in all realms and truly benefit all beings. Thank you, everyone. So if we really had to define merit in English, we might say it's being or doing something that is worthy or creates value. And it's said that when we meditate or we engage in other forms of spiritual practice like yoga or chanting or striking the bells, we are also accumulating merit. And dedicating this value, this wholesomeness to all sentient beings expands our meditation beyond ourselves. And it can be likened to setting an intention at the beginning of our practice. I don't know if any of you do that, but I do. And in this way, we're cultivating bodhicitta, or our awakened mind and heart. So we enter into meditation with the intention to benefit all beings. And we then engage in the practice. We sit zazen, we meditate, and when we're finished, we can make a dedication. It's not just for Sunday mornings together. It's important to remember that just as making a dedication enriches and empowers our spiritual practice, it can also empower all of our actions in our life, in our daily lives. In fact, I'm quoting this lion's roar again. The merit accrued from any action, even if it's just washing the dishes or walking to work, can be dedicated to the benefit of all beings. That means we can make a dedication at the conclusion of a spiritual practice, as we do here in the Zendo, at the end of our day, after a meal, or at the conclusion of any activity. And as Roshi Joan reminds us, may this practice nourish each thing in all realms and truly benefit all beings.